Welcome, everybody. It's another live edition of Books Cafe, sponsored by free-ebooks.net. I'm your host, Scott Patton, and I'm really excited today. We have an amazing guest for you. He's an award-winning, internationally recognized author and speaker, and a self-professed geek. I think I'm a geek too, but not at the level of self-professed. He's founder and president of B2B Interactive Marketing, Inc., an award-winning marketing consulting and production company in Aurora, Illinois. So if you love Wayne World, you're going to love our guest. And with that, I'm going to bring him on. Welcome to the show, Brian. How are you doing today?
Party on. Excellent.
Party on.
Woo, 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 woo. I'm great, man.
Awesome. So what we do here on the show is we want to really support authors. So Free Books is a place where authors can go and put their books on there for free. We've got we've got hundreds of categories, not thousands of categories, and thousands of books. We've got millions of people, truly millions of people each month coming to the site. We have millions of people on our email list, and we send out newsletters having to do with specific topics, either mystery or nonfiction. So if you're interested in contributing to our newsletters, get a hold of us. If you don't know how to get a hold of us and you can't read what's above my head, I'm afraid I can't help you, because all authors need to know a little bit about how to do some research. We don't want to make it too easy for you. And we're really excited that you agreed to come on, Brian, because your vast experience in writing books, marketing, and all that sort of stuff. So I guess my first question is, share a little bit about how you got into, why did you actually decide to write your first book?
Yeah. Well, the first book I decided to write was It's Not About You. And when I did the book, it was originally going to be a how-to book about social media. It was back in 2014. Social media had really kind of taken off. Obviously, it's been around since 2006 and was really in its heyday. And as I started writing the book, it occurred to me after the third chapter that the book was obsolete already. And because, everything you write about the internet, I know Warren Whitlock, who's been on your show, has written a lot of books about Twitter. And every time he writes a book about Twitter, it's outdated before it's published,
Right.
And so what I did is I kind of switched it around, did a why-to book about why you want to do social media, social networking, that kind of stuff. And actually, as I was writing the book and I was promoting it, I was going out to a lot of networking meetings, because that's what the book is about, networking, meeting people, doing that kind of stuff.
Right.
And how social media and social networking kind of intertwine. And I was meeting with a client, and she looked at me and she says, "Why do you take so many pictures of bacon?" Because all the meetings I were going to were breakfast meetings. And I was taking all these pictures of bacon and putting them up on Facebook, and people were just going nuts. They were like commenting and sharing and sending me all these pictures and memes and all this other stuff. And she says, I just got to tell you, you've got to rename your book. It's not about you. It's about bacon. And I said, oh my God, that's right. So I had a friend design the cover before I finished the book. And he went home and took bacon, cooked it, and then photoshopped it, took pictures of it and photoshopped it into the word bacon. And when I was writing the book, I came up with an acronym, and the acronym stands for Building Authentic Connections Online Networking. So it kind of became the brand that just exploded. And so when I started writing the book, really what I was trying to do was just kind of promote my business. That was the whole purpose behind it, and try to get myself as an expert in the space, because I've been doing it for so long. And when I say it, I mean marketing. I've been marketing since I was like 16 years old. I've run businesses all my life. I've worked for AT&T. I've worked for Arthur Andersen. I've done a whole bunch of different things. So I had this vast amount of experience. Right. And I wanted to try to capture it and do something with it, kind of get basically, create a little celebrity out of it. Although I learned, that's not as easy as it sounds. So, but that was the whole purpose of starting to write the book. And, when I started writing the book, I said to myself, okay, what's the goal behind this thing? And the goal was to sell it at speeches. I was speaking locally. I got some national ones, and I figured it cost me, when it was all said and done, to have the book done, because I self-published. I didn't go through a publisher.
Right.
It was about $5,000 between the cover design, the interior design. I hired an indexer. I will never do that again. It's so hard to index a book.
All right.
And I hired a proofreader, and and then I hired an editor too on top of it. So I hired this whole team around me to do it. And it costs about $5,000. And I figured, when I sold the books, I would, when I sell them at a speech or online through Amazon, averaged around $10 per sale. So I need to sell 500 books.
Right.
And what happened is I ended up the first year selling about 2,500. So not only did I break even, I actually made some money.
And that's unusual. That's really unusual.
Well, that's because I practiced what I preached in the book.
You're one of those few people in the world where if you actually do what the person says in the book, it works.
Yes, exactly. And that's one of the things about, my marketing and the things that I do is everything is based on, can I make the end user more money? The bottom line is I always think that marketing should never, ever be an expense. It should always be an investment. And if you spend $1, you should be able to make 3 back or 10 back or 100 back, depending on what you're doing. So, I did all the things that most people do, created a website, did a book launch, had an event, had a local book signing, and I hired a person to come out to make everything bacon. I mean, we had bacon cake, we had bacon wrapped dates, we had, you name it, and, I promoted the heck out of it. And, and then I sold it when I went to networking events, and I sold it at speeches, and, and I use social media to promote the book. And one of the things that led me to was a second book. And so did I answer your question? Because I don't want to ramble too much.
You did. And I want to highlight a couple things that really stood out that I think a lot of authors don't think about. Mm-hmm. Number one was you had a goal and a purpose, a why for your book, which was very specific. I'm going to be speaking, and I'm assuming that you probably were doing speaking before that.
Yes.
So I'm used to being on stage, and all these other guys have books, and people run to the back and buy their books, and I should do the same. Well, plus, if they buy the business card, that's a lot better than if you give away the business card. And those
300-page business card.
That's right. And oftentimes people will just give that away, whereas you're saying, no, it's $20 or $10 or $15 or whatever the price was that you had. And now you've got somebody who's listened to you. Mm-hmm. They've heard you. They like you. They bought your book. They're a customer. And hopefully in your book, there's stuff there that's going to encourage them to go to your website, sign up for something, and you're able to continue building that relationship. And I think most authors, and now we're talking about a business book here. Obviously, this doesn't apply to science fiction unless you go to science fiction conferences to speak, I guess.
Yep.
But we use that an awful lot in business. But regardless of whether it's fiction or nonfiction, most people are like, oh, I guess I'll write a book, and then they get pad and paper and they write their book, and and that's it. And it's kind of like, well, like, what is the purpose? Like, why are you doing this? And what do you want to get out of it? And if you don't answer those questions, I think you're like 90% of the way to a failure, because you don't, because now it's like, well, I have this I have this book. A friend of mine I bought his book recently, Rob versus the Spammers. Now I can tag him, and he's got to watch this to see when I talk about his book. It's a great book, and it's very clear what his purpose is in having the book, right? Mm-hmm. But if you're not clear, then nothing's going to happen. And I think, is it a dream or a myth or a fantasy that you write a book, it goes into chapters in the whatever section, and then thousands of books get sold that year?
No. Yeah, it's a dream. It's a myth. Let's put it this way. You know it, and I know it. The average book sells about 100 to 150 copies, and about 149 of them are to family and friends. So it's so hard to get out there. And when books first started being written in the 1990s, and You know, I mean, they've been written forever, but when we were able to start actually putting them on the internet, the competition was pretty small. You know, now self-publishing a book is so easy that, you know, you're basically competing with millions and millions and millions of books. So, you know, defining your brand and getting yourself out there is harder than it used to be. And sticking out is harder. And so, you know, that I think the key thing is that having a purpose behind the book. And actually, I'll talk about the sequence because I have 4 books that I did that kind of all work together.
Okay. So Brian, before you bring it up, I'm going to bring up, I'm like I do this like every day, all week for
I know.
years. And I'm going like, what button do I push? But I'm going to bring up the Amazon page, your author page. And if you look in the comments, wherever you are, except if you're on Twitter, there's a link. So you don't have to write this link. You don't have to screen share it. Just go look in the comments and you can click and you can come right where we are. And so we're talking about, it's not about you, it's about bacon.
Right.
And so that's the one that we've just talked about. And I'll just go back for a second. And that's the next one was the next one your workbook and guide?
Well, the workbook and guide.
Let's go into the sequence because I can move between the books while you're talking about it rather than me guessing.
Yeah, and actually, so what happened is once I wrote the book, what I did is I decided on my book page to write a blog every single day for 365 days.
Wow.
And it was a 50-word blog post. And what it was a tip based on the things that were in the book. And I broke them down into technology, into networking, into, you know, just relationships, those kind of things. And then what I did is I took those 365 blog posts, and I sent them to a virtual assistant. And I said, okay, I want you to read through these, and I want you to pick the 101 best tips that you found. And those 101 best tips turned into my second book, which is called Bacon Bits. So that's the number 2 book. And that is a little just kind of giveaway $10 book. And I did this one. The Bacon Bits one's a little small one. There it is. And this one is one that I designed as a giveaway. You know, when I was at these meetings, I would say, okay, you know, raise your hand if you blah, blah, blah. And somebody would get one of these books, these little, you know, and it's what I call a bathroom book. You could sit down and read this thing in the bathroom really, really quick. So I found
you could make 101 trips to the bathroom, read a tip a time, and you'd take you a third of the year to get through it.
I could go off on a tangent on that, but I'm just going to let it slide. But that works really well in my last book, Toilet Paper Math. But anyway, so Bacon Bits was written, and, you know, basically all I did was take the blog posts. I took content that I was putting together to promote my book and turned it into another book. And this one actually sells still today pretty well. People just see it and they like, and again, the same guy designed the logo that you see. He designed that Bacon Bits. He actually took Bacon Bits and made Bacon Bits.
Right.
You know?
Wow.
And so then,
and, you know, it's a good thing you told us that, because I'm pretty sure that there'll be like 5 Photoshop guys.
Right.
They're going to be looking at that and saying like, how did he do that? Like, what filter did he use, man? Like, where did that texture come from?
No, he actually took Bacon Bits and put them down in a big pile and then basically cut the stuff out and turned it into, you know, the actual Bacon Bits. Right. So the third book, actually there's 5 if you count the workbook. As I was speaking, I was actually being asked to teach at colleges. So I was speaking online at like Central Washington University. I've taught at Notre Dame. I've taught locally at Aurora University, at Waubonsie. And one of the things that happened is people were using my first book as a kind of an educational book for people in the in their, you know, marketing and PR and social media classes. So I actually hired another person to come in and go through my book and create worksheets and create a workbook to go along with the first book. So not only was the book sold, but the workbook was sold. And then, so
Right.
as I was
This is
going out,
called upselling in the world of marketing, right?
yeah,
You've got
exactly.
something and then you can upsell it. So I want to take just a second before you continue, because this is
Sure.
fascinating, to tell everybody that right now we are live. So if you have a question, we've got some people watching.
Mhm.
Put it in the comments. If you're on Facebook or YouTube, wherever it is, they'll pop up. I'll get them and I'll interrupt Brian and ask your question at the appropriate time. We've had
Sure.
7 people that have hearted and liked what we've been doing so far. So please, let's get it to 100%. Keep giving us those likes. And with that, we're back to the guide.
Yep. So the guide is, again, it was one of those kind of things where people who bought the book, said, I've been writing inside of this and I've been taking so many notes, and, and the guide not only was good for the college classes, but it was something that people were using on their own to kind of fill out a game plan of what to do. And so that, started to sell itself. So all of a sudden I was selling 2 books, and then people would buy the Bacon Bits book. And so that turned into, like a micro system.
Right.
So then I was out speaking at conferences, and everybody said, okay, this stuff is really great, but how do you do what you do? And so and in the process of this,
what happens behind the curtain, right?
Yeah. How did you create this system around marketing your books and those kind of things? And in the process of this, I started a podcast. And started interviewing guests about, affiliate marketing, email marketing, thank you, sir.
So I have one question, Brian. Like, what did you call the podcast?
You want to know the truth?
Yes.
I started it out as My Marketing Magnet. That was the original name of the podcast, and it flopped. It died. It just died.
Of course.
And I did it for 3 months, and I was actually I was at a conference that I actually was speaking at, on the first book. And there was this guy there who was doing a presentation about podcasts, and I actually hired him as a podcasting coach, and he helped me set everything up. And I got into one of his mastermind groups and enjoyed the heck out of that. And after 3 months, I said, this thing is doing nothing. It's basically, falling flat. And he says, okay, let me be honest with you. Change the name to the Bacon Podcast. I said, really? Isn't that too much bacon? He said, no.
You can't have too much bacon.
You can't have too much bacon. So I changed it to the Bacon Podcast, and it took off. Absolutely took off. So, so through this, I was interviewing a whole bunch of people on different topics. And as I started developing these topics, I was going and giving these speeches about the book, and everybody saying the book is really great, but, how do you do all the things you're doing, websites and analytics and content marketing and all these other things? And that turned into book number 3, actually number 4.
We're going to stick with the podcast just for a second.
Oh, go right ahead. Go ahead.
I started podcasting in 2005, and it's one of my passions. And I wanted to put, and I really believe that one of the secrets to success is finding people that are where you want to be and then modeling them. And one of the reasons you're on the show is you're one of the people that I think people should model. And I just wanted to point out that this is episode 643. And today's date is the 28th of January, 2021. And the date of this podcast is January 26, 2021, which shows to massive action gets you massive results, and consistency gives you, like, I don't know when you started, but 643 episodes means you've been pretty consistent over the years, because that's a huge number, and not very many people get. Actually, about 80% of people who start a podcast don't make it to episode 7.
Right.
And so, so if I'm looking, so here you are, authors, just think about this for a second. If someone goes and looks at your podcast and you've got 2 episodes in there, what are they going to think? If they look at it and you've got 200 episodes, what are they going to, this person is consistent. They believe in what they're doing. There's all this credibility that comes up. And, so we want to use different ways of getting our message to people. Some people like to read, some watch videos, some want to shake hands, some want to listen when they're in the car. So you want to cover all those modalities. I think in my opinion, we're past the time of well, you need to blog and just blog and don't do anything else. That's kind of ridiculous, right? You only
Yes, it
tweet,
is.
never put anything on LinkedIn, or never do a YouTube video. It's crazy. You
Right.
want to meet your audience where they are. So I was just like really happy and really proud to see that you've got 643. And I hope when you hit 650 and 700, you have celebratory podcast episodes, because that's pretty cool.
Yeah, last year was episode 500 in January. So, it's and the secret to this is I've been doing 2 podcasts every week for 7 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I do it because so there's a handful of things that go along with the podcast, and this actually feeds into the 4th book. The thing about the whole purpose behind the podcast is A, it's good promotion, but B, it gets me the opportunity to interview some really incredibly cool people. Right. And learn things. And what most people don't realize, I do what's known as a monocast on Monday, and I do a expert interview on Wednesday. So I record those expert interviews. They basically sit and, I based on what I feel is the best thing, I'll edit them and put them out, that week. And I'll usually try to match the monocast to whatever the other person was talking about. And so what happens in that monocast, just so you know, is as soon as I'm done with that monocast, I send it to Rev and have it transcribed. And then I import it into my blog, and I have a virtual assistant who basically goes in, adds the pictures, proofreads it, and posts it. So nice. I'm taking the podcast and actually turning it into a blog post without doing anything.
Yes, that's a big part of the strategy, because you don't want to be spending all of your time doing all that stuff when you can do it once and you're done.
Right. So then what happens is that same VA. So now I have something on Monday. And then on Tuesday, the blog comes out. And then on Wednesday, the expert interview comes out. And then on Thursday, my VA sends out an email saying, here's the latest blogs and podcasts.
Nice.
And it promotes. So there's that system set up.
Because what you're creating is not sales pitches, but content that people are interested in, you have high engagement on your emails. You have high engagement if they post the links on your Facebook group or Facebook page or LinkedIn.
Exactly.
We've noticed, just so you know, and I have a client that has like 50,000 people on his email list. A year and a half ago, he had what I don't know what you define it. I don't know what the definition is of this, but he had 440 actives.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that was a month or that was 3 months that they opened or whatever, but it was 440. So every week for the last year and a half, we've sent out 2 emails. One was, and they were both, we sent, in addition to everything else he sent out, he sent out 2 emails, and they were basically, this is what was on the podcast yesterday, or this is on our latest episode, and this is what was on it. And he's gone from 440 to 16,500 actives.
Right.
And he cannot believe it. Right. Because of course, when people open your emails, then that means they, when you do send something that's a salesy thing, like I've got an event, come to the event, he's getting way more opens and everything else than he was before.
Right.
So before we move on to book number 4, Christos has a question. So I want to bring it up. And I don't know that I understand it, but great content, Scott and Brian. Thank you, Christos. Can you please describe in a few words about the relationship marketing versus the classic 5P or 5C marketing most of us know? So do you know what 5P is?
Well, I think if he's talking about the classic 5P, and I don't know a 5P, I'm considering a 4P, and maybe he can actually comment back what those are. But it's price placement, that product. Kind of thing. Right. It's product, price, placement, and one other P. Promotion. Thank you. If that's what he's...
great team, Brian.
I know. I love it. High five. Virtual high five.
I don't know what it is, and then you start, and then I finish. So it's awesome.
Well, that's because it's. I don't live in that space. I live in the B2B space. So I don't spend a whole lot of time. That's very consumer oriented. Relationship marketing is really, that's what my last book is about. What relationship marketing is actually building a one-on-one relationship like you and me are doing now. Right. And so I'm going to follow you on Facebook or LinkedIn. You're going to follow me on Facebook or LinkedIn. I'm going to wish you a happy birthday. You're going to wish me a happy birthday. You're going to say, hey, I got an opening on the show. You want to come back on and just talk about this?
Right.
Or I'll have you on my podcast to talk about what you do for authors and how you like using StreamYard and doing a show. You know, it's like,
I
that's
love StreamYard.
I'm loving it too. I mean, I just got LinkedIn Live, and I'm going to be doing my first StreamYard show on this coming Saturday. So,
Nice.
but that's what relationship marketing is. It's more of a one-on-one type of thing. And in the B2B space, that's really what it's about. The B2B space is about having a one-on-one relationship.
B2B is business to business.
Business to business, right?
Selling another business.
Yeah, business to consumer, it's much harder to do relationship marketing. You can do it, you know, but it's in the consumer world. Usually those purchases are based on need or, you know, want or something like that. So, you know, say you sell a car to somebody, you can build a relationship with that person. If you move to a new dealership, you can always contact that person, you know, and say, hey, I've moved from, you know, Ford to Toyota. You know, if you're looking for a car, come see me. You know, that's relationship marketing in the consumer space, but it's harder. You know, it's not the same.
Right.
Kind of thing.
That's a really good distinction that I hadn't thought about it the way I just had like a light. Did you see the little light bulb over my head?
I did. Yes, I did. As a matter of fact, there was a big flash.
I spent 20 years managing grocery stores, which by definition is business to consumer. We had 20,000 customers come through the checkouts every week, sort of thing. Right? And now I'm really am business to business. When I think of my clients and everything else, I mean, they're all people. They're the ones that sell lots of people into things. I just deal with them, right?
Right.
And I hadn't really thought about that. I mean, if you'd asked me, I guess I would have said business to business. But when you were saying it, it was like, oh yeah. And there's a huge difference in your approach. And I think a lot of problems that people have is they get it confused. You know, is your book a business to business book, or is it a business to people book, or is it a people to people book even? Right? Because you've got outsourcing and stuff going on now. And if you don't get those things clear, then they get in the way. They're like a black hole that you step into, and you wonder why nothing. You know, why you can't see anything. And nothing is happening.
Yep. And business to consumer and business to business are two different ways of looking at things. I primarily focus on the B2B side of things. I've always, you know, I never really worked with consumers over the course of years, even though I was a shoe salesman at one point. That was the first job I ever had. But, you know, at AT&T and Arthur Anderson and throughout the years, I mean, I've worked with large corporations. So I've always been working in that space.
Right.
So anyway, so everything that we've described so far, you know, is a system, right? I mean, we're talking about, you know, how I wrote a book and then I wrote a blog and then the blog turned into a book and I do a podcast and the podcast turns into
a blog
posts and then that turns into an email. And then on top of that, a lot of that content was reconstructed for my last book.
Okay.
But
I hate to keep interrupting you, but
please do.
There is the podcast URL, baconpodcast.com. It is in the comments, so you don't have, you can write it down. I'll write it down. But if you go to the comments, wherever you're watching this, scroll down, click on it, and it'll take you right to the podcast. And I highly recommend that you listen to them, subscribe, and if you found this at all interesting, and I know that you did. So there you go.
Thank you. No, I appreciate that because I'm so busy trying to teach people. I'm not promoting anything. That's just my nature. But one thing about the podcast, I try to keep them short. They're 10 or 20 minutes because the average commute is about 20 minutes. I don't get into these long, hour-long rants. And everybody I interview, I always ask them for 3 core takeaways. So everything has action, you know, that people can take. Great interviews. I love doing that. It's always been my thing. So back to the system. We've talked about this whole system. Finally, I wrote this other book called The Bacon System. And what the Bacon System does is basically take everything that I do and puts it into context so it makes sense. And so what I talk about in the Bacon System is, it's sizzling hot recipes to grow your business. And what I talk about is what I call the marketing trifecta. In order for the marketing trifecta to work, you need 3 core points. And that is, number one, you need to have a website. You need to own your own website. You don't want to do a Wix. You don't want to do a WordPress. You don't want to do a freebie. You want to own the website because you want to be able to move it. You want to be able to upgrade it. You want it to grow. You know, it's like when I did my first book website, that got outdated in about 3 years, you know, the technology. So I was able to upgrade it, add a new theme to it, add some more functionality to it, do some other cool things. So the marketing trifecta is you have to have a killer website. You have to understand how to read Google Analytics. What are the analytics telling you? You know, what's important for you to know? It's not the number of hits. It's the engagement. It's the things, it's the clicks that people are doing. It's what are they doing once they get into the website?
Now, you have a website with a lot of blog posts. I'm assuming over 643 of them.
Yes.
So everybody, you know, authors listening to this, keep in mind that as you know, when you've got 3 pages, like your main page, about me, and how to contact me, that's one scenario. But when you've got 600 pages, it's a totally different situation. And you could be missing out on gold mines in your website, because if you've got 643 pages, and let's say 80% of the people go to 5 of those pages, what are the topics on those 5 pages? Because that's what everybody is really interested in. Should you be talking about them some more? Should you write a book about that? Should you do a video course on that? Should you, like, who knows what you should do? But if you have no clue who's looking at what page on your website, then you're missing out on potentially serving your customer, your client, as well as you could.
Right. Exactly. And so that's why analytics is so important. You need to understand what's happening. And then the third part is what I call the content creation or content marketing. That is the creation of all of this stuff. That is the blogs, the podcasts, the videos, the graphics, all of those pieces. That becomes the content, the assets that you create. Where people get confused is they think that social media is a platform and that's the only thing that you should do. You should go on social media and comment and, post a couple of things on there. Here's the biggest problem with social media. You don't own it. You own nothing.
Wait, Brian, I have to ask you this question.
Yes.
What is the biggest problem with social media?
The biggest problem with social media is the algorithms and the fact that here's the bottom line. If in social media, if you are not paying for the service, you are the product being sold.
Right.
So you have no control over what people see. And you have no way of doing anything unless you're paying for advertising on there. And what Facebook did an incredible job of is getting everybody hooked on crack. And that crack was, come set up a business page, get 1,000 people to like your page, and we're going to show it to everybody. And so when you got the 1,000 likes, you put something up there, 1,000 people saw it. Okay. Today, that same page, 1,500 people on mine, on the B2B one. Out of that, if I post something on there, guess how many people actually see it without me paying for ads?
48. 3?
3.
Wow.
3 to 6 people is all that see it. They don't promote it anymore unless you pay to boost or you pay for advertising. So they got everybody hooked on crack, and now they got people buying ads. And I just interviewed somebody who does car dealerships, and that's what they do. They basically just pay all day long, to get people into the dealers to collect leads. Now, is it a good way to do things? Yes. But it's got to have an ROI. You remember what I said way back yonder? Every dollar that you spend, you need to make 3. And where most people fail is they spend $1 and they make none. Right.
And I would say that would be applicable to most authors, because they're not marketers. They haven't spent, basically if you're doing what you said the person you interviewed was doing, all they're doing is that advertising program. And the car dealership is looking after the cars, the selling of the cars, the inventory, the creating the new all that stuff, training salespeople. So if you're an author, now you're expected to do all the things that the car dealership does and the advertiser, which is not realistic.
Yeah, and I've had people come to me as authors, and say, "Hey, I want you to help me promote my book." And I said, it doesn't make any sense, because here's the bottom line. If we spend $1,000 on advertising inside of LinkedIn or Facebook or wherever it is, depends on who your audience is, or
Right.
Google, you can buy ads anywhere. We spend $1,000. How much do you make per book? And they say, well, I make $1 because they're sold to the devil and had it published, or they do their
Right.
own book and maybe they make $5, right?
Right.
So I say, okay, so you're going to spend $1,000 and I need you to make $3 on every single one of those. Okay. So, that means that we've got to sell 3,000 books in order for this to work, for every $1,000 that you spend. I hate
The
to tell
math
you,
doesn't work.
ain't going to happen. Right.
Math doesn't work.
Right. So you have to figure out how to do it yourself. So that's what the system is for. So you have a website, you post content on the website, you check the analytics as to what people want, and then you use social media, email, video, whatever it is. Those are the distribution channels for your content. And that what happens is you put something up on Facebook, you put it up on LinkedIn, you put it up on YouTube. What it should do is drive traffic back to your website, and you should be able to measure the results of what traffic is coming into your website from those activities. That's how you know where you're getting the best results. And so the system is all about having that core and then creating that great content, but then sharing it out there. And the cool thing is it's assets. You could take the same blog post, the same podcast, and share it on Twitter over and over and over again. And to somebody getting on Twitter, they may see a 4-year-old podcast or blog and say, wow, this is really great, but it's brand new to them, but it's been there forever.
Right.
So you can churn and burn that stuff the whole time. So that's what the Bacon system is about.
Right. That's a really, really good point, because oftentimes people will say, well, I need to put my new stuff up. And it's like, no, how often should someone post? I don't know. But let's say it's twice a day. Well, how am I going to create content for twice a day? Well, in your case, you've got 643 blog posts, 643 audios, shows like episodes of your podcast. So you could post everything 4 times a day and you'd basically get through the year.
Right.
And then you could do the same thing again. Like, forget about adding more stuff. You could keep doing it, because when you've got 3 or 4 people here and 3 or 4 people there and 3 or 4 people there, because guess what? We've got these feeds that move down, which means that when I post my tweet, when you post your tweet, I miss it by an hour. Darn.
Right.
But next time, maybe it hits me. So you've got this massive amount of information flowing through everybody's feeds. And if you're not putting if you're fishing, if you're not putting your hook in often enough, you're not going to be catching anything.
Right. And I always preach that everything you create should be an asset. So for example, I could take blog posts and turn them into books. I could take blog posts and turn them into podcasts. I could take podcasts and turn them into video series. I could take, a video and turn that into a podcast, into a blog, and then take those blogs and turn it into a book. I mean, it's like all of it should be intertwined with a purpose.
Right.
That's the key.
And the purpose is the key.
Right. And the purpose should be to make some money, right? I mean, if we're doing this for fun, that's fine. If it's a hobby, that's great. Right. But if you're not figuring out a way to monetize all of this stuff, and one of the biggest challenges is there's a lot of people out there who say, I'm going to turn you into a 6-figure business, but they don't teach you everything that you need to know to become a 6-figure business, because they're not teaching you the entrepreneurial side. They're not teaching you the managerial side. They're teaching you the technical side. Right. They're teaching you how to post to LinkedIn, how to get, fans on your email list via Pinterest, how to use Instagram to kill it, why TikTok is the greatest thing since buttered bread. But in reality, you've got to create and feed that monster. Well, if you're creating great content, you've already got all the content you need to feed the monster. Yeah. Now you don't have to do that. Now they become vehicles for you to get that information out there, and it's no longer the draw. You know what I mean?
Right. So, Brian, I know we're getting a little bit close to the end of our time together, and I appreciate your generosity. So I need to ask you, what does toilet paper have to do with bacon?
Okay, so toilet paper math is very, very simple. You go to a grocery store, you walk down the aisle, and down there you see all these different toilet paper in packages, and it says 8 equals 32, 9 equals 64, 10 equals 128, and that's toilet paper math. And what they've done is they've taken toilet paper that used to be 4.5 inches square, shrunk it down to 4.1 inches, down to 3.7 inches, put more on a roll, and basically sell you, less content for more money, but make you feel like you're getting more because on the outside of the package, they're saying 8 equals 64, right?
The toilet paper section of the grocery store is the most confusing place because you've got 4 packs, 12 packs, 36 packs. You've got 3 roll, 1 roll, or 3 ply, 1 ply, 2 ply.
Right.
It's just like double the roll, but
Right.
half the rolls.
Right, exactly. And that's essentially what most B2B businesses get. Is they go out and they hire, a perfect example of this is one of my friends asked me, he says, Brian, we love what you do, but we're going to hire a marketing person. I said, which one? He goes, what do you mean? I said, are you going to hire an SEO guy, a website guy, an artist, an email marketer? Which one of those people are you going to hire? And it's like, well, I don't know. It's like, how do I hire them all? You can't. That's the biggest problem. And toilet paper math is exactly that. The SEO guy says, hey, I'm going to get you more traffic to your website. Yeah, I can get you 1 million visitors to your website tomorrow for $500. Do you want that? Most people say yes. I say there's only 2 problems with it. You have to translate your website to Russian and Farsi, and none of those people are going to buy from you. So what happens is toilet paper math is all about people are so looking at the bright, shiny object that they miss the concept of how do I make money off my marketing? And that's what toilet paper has to do. Plus, there was a toilet paper shortage at the beginning of 2020. So that was kind of the impetus behind it.
So tie in your marketing and what you're doing with current affairs if you can. And,
sure.
And that's beautiful. Yeah. There's a toilet paper shortage. Well, how does the math work?
Right. So the final book, this one I wrote with a different purpose. And that is what I do is I meet people on LinkedIn that are B2B companies that have sales teams that are my perfect audience. And what I don't care if I sell a single one of these. I bought 100 of the books. I got 100 boxes. I have 100 rolls of toilet paper and I have a sticker that I put on there. And then I created a case study based on the book. So what I do is I meet somebody and I say, hey, send me your address. I put the book, the toilet paper, the case study in a box with stickers on the outside of the box and ship it to them. And it becomes, that is my marketing piece. So that's the whole purpose behind that book.
Nice.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's brilliant.
So this book is just that. It is the case for the B2B companies on why they need to hire a company to come in and fill in all those gaps. Because they usually are hiring an agency that will come in and basically sell to their inventory, or they'll hire an SEO company that will write blogs that suck. I'm right. Sorry, but they're not in the writing business. They're in the SEO business, and they'll hire somebody at $15 an hour in India to write blogs for them, which don't talk to their customer. Right. So the purpose, so you can kind of see where each one of these books has its own purpose, its own goal. This one turned into a master class, which I ended up teaching and actually making, charging $1,500 to teach this whole system. And it's been recorded and people can use it. And it comes with worksheets and a whole bunch of other things. Nice. This one is my freebie to give away. This is this is my crack. This is what gets everybody interested because they see the word bacon and starts them down that roll. So each one of the books has a purpose behind it. It's not like I'm writing a series to keep building. There's a lot of people that will write, book number 1, they'll do book number 1 for salespeople and book number 1 for auto dealerships. And they'll just keep tacking that on, That's not the way I do it. I do it so that everything has its own purpose.
And and the purposes all tie in together, whether they may not be the same purpose specifically, but they're all part of the general major overall purpose.
Exactly.
And yeah. I think, because you didn't write a book about bacon let's just say about bacon. This one isn't about bacon, folks. You didn't do another one about skiing and then another one about vacationing in Bali. You had your theme, you had your kind of your brand,
mm-hmm.
and then you put everything under that. Awesome. So, Brian, we're getting towards the end of our time together.
Yep.
If you had one big tip, and let's say you can't use what's the purpose of your book or your writing for new authors or even established authors that could help them get to the next level, what would that be?
I think the biggest tip is, if you're going to write a book, hire people to help you. I think that's one of the things. You have to be willing to invest in yourself. So hire a book writing coach, hire a promotional coach, hire a proofreader, hire a somebody who can actually go through your book and edit it. The bottom line is, be willing to invest. Take the chance on investing somehow, some way, because you have to have a purpose behind all of that, obviously. But the thing is we all want to try to do everything ourselves, but I don't. I want other people to come in and help fill in the gaps. Work to your strengths, hire to your weaknesses. If you're a great writer, that's awesome. But what looks good to you may not look good to the audience. So you want to get a second set of eyes on it and make sure that it makes sense. So I think that, being part of a community, hiring help is really, really huge to being successful.
The reason that there was that awkward silence was because not me, but me made a comment, and I'm like, how did that happen? But we do what you do, what you just said. We have people that work with us on Facebook and she, thank you very much. She made this comment, Toilet Paper Math Explained. This is not Charmin edition. This is Bacon Guy edition. Get your own copy. Thank you very much for sharing that. So I was like stunned. It's like, because if I make a comment, that's what it looks like, right?
Right. Yeah.
Where did that come from? I didn't do it. So,
so you hired to your weakness, right? You hired somebody to write a comment for you.
That's right. And they've done a couple times. Oh yeah. So Anita, thank you very much, Anita. Glad that you were able to tune in at the end of it. And
thank you, Anita.
She was all excited when she found out you were on my show. I interviewed her last week, as a matter of fact. And so thank you very much, Brian. Really appreciate you coming on the show and sharing all of your knowledge. And I learned a lot. I made notes.
There you go.
Yeah. So that's when I know I have an awesome guest. Warren was right about you.
Thank you. Well, Warren's a great guy. I love Warren. He's a great guy. Love interviewing him. And I would love to have you on my podcast too. So let's return the favor. I'd
be delighted to be on it, Brian. So thank you for joining us, everybody. This has been Books Cafe, sponsored by free-ebooks.net. Head over to free-ebooks.net. Get 5 free ebooks a month. We've got tens of thousands of books, and I think we've got tens of hundreds of audiobooks. And support authors. The purpose of free-ebooks.net is for authors. So you authors, listen closely. You can put your books up on the site. People can download them and read them on their Kindle or whatever device they want for free. And now you're creating an audience. You're creating your tribe. You're creating your community. And the biggest problem that new authors have is reaching avid readers that are interested in their topics. Well, we've got over 5 million of those. So obviously they're not all interested in your topic, but there's certainly enough of them. We've got 70,000 avid romance readers. We've got 50,000 avid travel readers. And it just keeps going. Like when I hear the numbers from our stats guy, it just blows my mind how many different groups, communities we've already built. And all you have to do is put your book in front of those people and start growing it. I don't suggest that you do it if you only have one book. Because the plan would be, put your book there, have them read the book, and at the end of your book, say, if you like this book, I have another book. And that way you're going to start making some money as well. But head over to Brian's site, and I think I have it here somewhere.
Yeah, they could just search Brian Basilico anywhere, and they will find me. So.
Right. Put a .com at the end of this, and it'll come up.
Yep. Yeah, that's one of them too. Yeah, I have about 20 websites. So,
wow.
Yeah, one for the books, one for my podcast, one for my blogs, one for me, the speaker, all those kind of things.
Nice, great. So thanks again, Brian. Thanks for joining us, everybody. We'll see you next week. Bye for now.